We've all heard the phrase 1,000 times. Forgive and forget. It sounds noble, sounds spiritual, but practically it's often impossible. If you're waiting for your memory to be wiped clean before you can say you've truly forgiven someone, you're going to be waiting a long time. And that waiting game can breed bitterness. So today we're taking a sledgehammer to that cliché. We're talking about why memory isn't the enemy, why forgiveness doesn't always mean reconciliation, and how to finally set the prisoner free, only to discover that the prisoner was you. So, the big question: can you forgive, but you can't forget? Let's get into it. Welcome to the Easy Approach.
Take it easy. Take it easy.
Hey everybody, welcome into the Easy Approach. I am Nate, and as always, I'm joined by my good buddy Tony.
Yes, sir. Happy to be here, as always, like you just said. And I am very interested in today's topic. I think it has a lot of levels to it. Both, we like to talk about the Bible and God a lot, but I think every day, even more so, in my opinion.
Yeah, this should be a fun one. And look, you guys know us. We don't like to beat around the bush. We like to let her rip, hop right into it. So that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna hop right into it.
Let it rip.
Here's the topic today. Does forgiveness require forgetting? Does forgiveness require forgetting? And we're trying to take a close look at that cliche phrase of forgive and forget.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the goal is, is there a balance there? Is it 100% forget? 0% forget? Is it 50%? What's the healthy, mature, practical understanding of what forgiveness really is, and then the role that memory plays in the process? So to start off our talk here, let's start with the phrase forgive and forget. I think everyone's probably heard that one before. Have you ever been told that, Tony?
Mm-hmm.
And how has it landed on you?
Yeah, just like anything, you can be on either side of a situation like that, right? Where whenever if you are in conflict and you're upset with someone else and it's like, hey, okay, it's time to move on, you need to just forgive and forget that this ever occurred. But there's like this justified feeling inside of me that's like, no,
Mm-hmm.
like
Yeah.
as much as I am all for reconciliation and I want to, make sure that we come to a middle ground, there's you can't, and we've had, episodes about this in the past, but you can't ignore those emotions sometimes, right? Where it's just like, I feel wronged, or I feel wronged on behalf of someone else, is usually a lot of the times where I start thinking of hypothetical situations that are grounded in unfortunate realities that I know people have had to deal with. And it's like, can I just expect them to forget after they have forgiven, like whatever that looks like for them? And it's just, a lot of times it's really, really hard to do, if especially if we're talking about something that is very heavy. But that's where my mind jumps to.
Yeah, it's interesting you brought up the talk we had about emotions and the importance of not just ignoring or bottling up or just moving past negative or heavy emotions, but the importance of acknowledging and facing them down and evaluating and processing through them and all that kind of thing. A friend of mine has a bunch of kids and has a newborn, and their previous youngest kid, who was the baby, isn't the baby anymore. And so he's just learning to talk and stuff. And now he's got another little sibling who's even younger and who's just crying about everything, and who's a newborn, so she can't talk or whatever else. And I was talking with them, and they were saying whenever his sister starts crying, he'll just say, "Don't think about it. Don't think about it. Don't think about it." Like he'll tell his newborn sister, "Don't think about it. Don't think about it. Don't think about it."
That's cute.
Yeah, and it's like, look, maybe there is a time, and this is where I think that like why this conversation is a little complicated.
Mm-hmm.
There is a time to not let something like to not let a memory sit in your head.
Mm. Yeah.
Like there is a time to not let things that have happened to you or things that people have done to you like have a center stage place in your head.
Mm-hmm.
So do you think that that's why there's appeal to the coupling of forgiveness and forgetting? Like there's like some level of truth to it, or do you think there's something else at play?
Yeah, I do think there's some level of truth to it. Like I alluded to earlier, because you can also find yourself on that same side of the coin where it's like you don't want to necessarily be guilty of the idea of holding something over someone else's head, right? Like especially in a
Hmm.
relationship or a marriage or even a friendship, like mistakes happen. People aren't perfect. God knows I am far from it. But you don't want to feel like you're doing this to someone else, and you don't want to feel like you're stuck in a corner where no matter what you do, your past mistakes are always just hovering above you like a guillotine ready to drop at any moment's
Mm.
notice, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So do you think there's a danger to the idea of like blind black and white
Oh, absolutely.
taking those terms, forgiveness and forgetting, just like forget it, forget it, forget it, forget it.
Yeah.
Is there a danger to this idea of like I will forcefully induce amnesia
Right.
upon myself. I will erase the memory
Yeah.
insofar as my ability goes.
Yeah, I think absolutely. And I also I'm not trying to rewind a little, but for me, it's also very important and imperative to have a clear understanding of what forgiveness even looks like. Like, what are we even talking about to begin with? You know, because I feel like if we don't have the same definition of terms, that sometimes forgetting is a part of someone's definition of forgiveness. Like you did this terrible thing, and if I choose to forgive you, then for them that can be very synonymous to saying I choose to forget that this even occurred to begin with.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's very core to
Mm-hmm.
our conversation. I think that's probably like the body of what we're going to talk
Yeah,
about
yeah.
is the like what is the goal of forgiveness? What is actually happening?
Yes.
And then is there like a healthy role to memory
Mm,
in the dynamic of like the interpersonal like relational dynamic?
mm,
Yeah, you know, I mean, I think part of the like before we even get into the meat, like part of the fundamental problem with coupling forgiveness and forgetting is it's like two different things.
absolutely.
Where I think forgiveness is fundamentally a decision, like this thing where I'm going to commit this act of the will,
Mm-hmm.
right, to release something, and we'll get into that. Maybe like release a debt or release a desire for like recompense or revenge or something. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But then forgetting is less an act of the will and more of like a cognitive process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And most of the time when you forget something, it's not even voluntary. So you can get like ticky tack with your definitions there of like just like actually forgetting. Actually forgetting is not so much an act of the will, but so like what is the balance there?
Mhm.
And then in another like sense entirely, like for like on another point entirely, if you think about as kind of a low stakes example of why black and white forgive and forget doesn't really pan out in reality. You know, it's like all of us have had a buddy that flakes out on plans
Mhm.
constantly. And so, you know, you can make a plan with your buddy and they can flake out on you and you can let it go. You can not hold a grudge. You can forgive them for it every single time. But would it be foolish to literally forget their track record?
Yeah. Yeah. Is there
Like,
is there wisdom to
yeah.
not remembering that?
Well, it's like the memory helps you learn like maybe I should not plan some like a time sensitive important event around this particular buddy's attendance.
Yeah.
It's like literally forgetting would set you up potentially for disaster. So there's a role of memory there, but we don't want to get like pedantic
Yeah.
or, you know, like I said, ticky tack with our definitions. And like you said, I think the whole point of this conversation is really to get down to the nitty gritty of what the point of what is forgiveness and what the point of it is, and is there a healthy balance and role of memory and all that?
Yeah, and what you were alluding to earlier about, are there possible negative consequences to the idea of forgive and forget, and where did it come from? Why do we as a culture have that to some degree? And I think honestly, it's very prevalent in Christian cultures.
Hmm.
I mean, obviously, that is our perspective and our background. For anyone who is new to the podcast, we do like to say that this is not a Christian podcast, but we are very much Christian. So, with that being said, I like to keep it very open and honest about what we struggle in our culture that you and I have seen, Nate. And I feel like, just from some, call it biblical poetry, but the idea that when it's described numerous times that, God will forget and cast, like he'll forgive you and then forget it and cast it into the sea like it never even existed, and it's just like
Yeah.
those two huge, like hyperbolic type of ideas that are very, like I said, Hebrew poetry basis, I think translates to modern Christian culture sometimes, where if you want to be a good Christian, well, then this is how you should forgive people. And it's like, ooh,
Yeah.
is that necessarily the case?
Yeah. I had thought about that one kind of leading up to this podcast, the statements in the Bible, because there's multiple that
Yeah.
imply that God doesn't remember
hmm
our sin. But he clearly does,
Yeah.
though.
Yeah.
Like you can look at various places in the Bible where God recalls things that he forgave people for.
hmm
So it's like it's not as though he navigates to the C drive of his brain
It
and
presses the
just
delete
hits
button.
like highlights and delete, and it's like we're like, God, remember that time when he's like, no, I have no idea what you're talking about. Okay. That particular file is in the recycle bin,
Yeah.
the omniscient recycle bin. Yeah, he clearly like remembers, but the act of not remembering, like in terms of choice, like to not allow that memory and that act to do something or to color the interaction or the future of the relationship or something along those lines, I think is more of what's meant. But all right, let's like take a step like forward in this conversation.
Absolutely.
If the goal of forgiveness isn't literally to like cognitively forget, then what would you say is the actual purpose of forgiveness? When you truly commit the act of forgiving somebody, what are you trying to achieve?
Yeah,
For them or even for you, what are you trying to achieve?
I love that question because I really do feel like there are so many layers and there's so much nuance here, because instinctively I want to use the word reconciliation. I want to say that when conflict has occurred or a wrong has occurred, whenever it's done by me or done by someone else, maybe it's always easier from the perspective that someone else did the wrong, right?
Yep.
But when that wrong has occurred and I am approaching a place of forgiveness, the hope is that there should be some kind of restoration of that friendship, of that relationship, of that connection. But then, like I said, that's how I feel instinctively. I want to say the word reconciliation. But then the logical side of my brain comes through. It's like, does that necessarily mean that when I forgive someone who I really don't want to be friends with anymore, I don't want them in my life, I don't think it's a wise nor loving choice for them to be in my life. But I
Yeah.
also understand that I need to forgive them, whatever that looks
Yeah.
like.
Right.
That doesn't necessarily mean reconciliation, does it?
No, it doesn't. Yeah. And I can definitely think of cases in my own life or other people's lives where it's like, forgive that person. Yes. But you shouldn't let them back in your life. Like they should not be a part of your life. The person that maybe like physically abused you and would love to continue doing so. No, like it is not loving or wise to be like to have that person in your life. But that doesn't mean not forgiving.
Yeah.
I think. Right? Like that's where the difficulty comes in here. there is a distinction between forgiveness and reconciliation.
Yeah.
I think forgiveness is a necessary step before reconciliation can happen,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't think it always needs lead to reconciliation in every case.
Yeah, and so I completely agree with you. It is like a necessary condition that has to be fulfilled in order to build a relationship again, right? You can't have a two-sided relationship that is working on both me giving to you and you giving to me if there is a lack of forgiveness, right? Or even if it's hidden, you know. But
Mm.
it makes me feel then that forgiveness has a lot more to do about me than it does about you. It has a lot more to do with what's going on in my heart, in my mind, in my emotions, in my desires than it does about the other person that I may or
Mm.
may not be forgiving. But once
Yeah.
more, that's, you know, I do think there is a lot of nuance to this.
Yeah. Yeah. There's I think with the act of forgiveness, there's a letting go, right? Like, this needs to be made right.
Mm-hmm.
Like that needs to be made right. I need to get vengeance, or I need that paid back, or that needs to be made right.
Mm-hmm.
I think forgiving is the act of letting go
Mm.
of that. Like, I'm gonna let that go. Like the debt, the vengeance, the retribution. I'm gonna let it go.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that's the same thing as cognitively forgetting.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
There's a super famous quote when it comes to the conversations around forgetting, and I don't actually think it's completely known who said it. I know it's attributed to an author named Smedes, but the moment I say it, this is going to ring a bell for sure.
Mm.
But that quote. To forgive is to set a prisoner free
Mm.
and discover that the prisoner was you, or
Yeah.
something to that effect.
Yeah.
I think that's really, really key. I think forgiveness is like one of and maybe the fundamental like element that makes forgiveness is cutting the cord that ties you to the hurt or to the debt
Mm-hmm.
or to the whatever it is, so that thing that occurred in the past no longer has control over your present emotional state.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, what is going to happen in the next steps of my life aren't dictated by that thing that happened
Mm.
in the past. So it's like cutting ties with that event, I think, is probably the biggest part of it. But we've got to flip it there, because what is the healthy role of memory after you have been hurt?
To remind you not to take certain paths that caused you to get hurt so you can avoid that.
Yeah, well, so but it's the balance, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's lessons
That's
that
right.
memory provide you with.
Yeah, lessons
Right.
learned. Uh-huh.
But how can you, like, there's a real difference between learning something and then letting a memory of past hurt fester
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
into bitterness or resentment
Or insecurity.
or whatever
Yeah,
else.
absolutely.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So, I mean, like the $1 million question, how do you get it right all the time? This is where we can, any topic we've talked about is like, well, how do you do the right? How do you get it just right?
It's super easy. No problem.
It's easy. Yeah, yeah. And for our listeners, that's the secret. It's easy. Yeah. It's like our whole thing is trying to take questions that are, admittedly, this is a really difficult question.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's even more difficult to do than it is to talk about. But Tony, if I were to like throw that challenge on your lap
Mhm.
and say, all right, how do you take the memory of past hurt to cut ties with that event in terms of how that event affects your future, but to hold the memory with you in such a way that you learn from it and not end up bitter or resentful?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And especially if we are, these things can happen in a day-to-day basis, absolutely. But my mind does go to more traumatic events, things that, like you alluded to, you can whenever you intentionally or not, your life will be impacted around this particular event, right? And so it's like it can be a huge struggle. Like that's what trauma is, right? At the end of the day, it's when something happens that you can't let go of one way or another, and you do have these insecurities that build up. You do have like these things that fester. And so how do you navigate that? Oof. Oh man, that's a good question. And in my life, that looked a lot like it looked a lot like seeking professional help.
Mm.
Therapy. I'm always a big fan, a big believer in therapy, and I will always say this too. It's like therapy's not just for people who are going through lows in life, because everyone has lows and highs. Like just because something isn't wrong doesn't mean that therapy can't help prepare you and make you more mentally grounded and emotionally stable to handle some of these unexpected things that may or may not come your way, right? So yeah, I mean there really is a need of an ongoing conversation that I've had to face, whenever that's with a professional, with a friend, or with me and God, quite frankly, like my quiet times of me not hiding from it, and me not hiding the hurt and acting like, oh, it's no big deal. Um, any level of ignoring an area where forgiveness is necessary because it involves someone else, I think does have that opportunity to turn septic if it gets ignored. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that like there is, as we said, I think there really is a healthy function of memory,
Mm-hmm.
and not to replay the hurt, but to provide wisdom for your future. So it's like there is such a thing as a healthy boundary. There is such a thing as wisdom in interpersonal relationships. So, to give another low stakes example, and this is something that's run through my brain, you can make a partnership with somebody like an untrustworthy business partner, and things can go terrible, and you can forgive that untrustworthy business partner in such a way that you free yourself from the anger. But that doesn't mean forgetting that they ever did it and leaving yourself open to drafting another bad contract with another untrustworthy business partner in the future. Like, you can remember the experience. You can remember, okay, this person, bless them, go and be blessed and be happy, but I'm not going to start another business with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. In other words, I think the memory, there's a difference between a memory being a teacher and being like a torturer,
Yeah.
or
That's
like a
good picture.
tormentor,
Yeah.
right? And I have definitely been on both sides of the coin
Mm-hmm.
there. There was without getting into details, there was a particular event, a particular person in my life, and this particular person hated my guts, and then proceeded to slander and lie about me to a lot of people that I was really close to.
It's okay. We've had
And
reconciliation since then, guys. So we do a podcast together now.
that's right. It was Tony the whole time.
No, go on.
Yeah. No, but I remember because I had lived in one area and then I moved to another area of the nation for another job. And this particular job I was working, I'd be up at like 4 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
And I started hearing all these reports from people in this other place in the nation of these things they were being told about me. And I was only hearing reports from the people who knew me well enough to come to me to talk to me about it.
Yeah.
But there were plenty more who didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like having my name dragged through the mud very actively and maliciously to a lot of people.
Mm.
And man, I tell you what, the thing that pops into your head when you're driving from point A to point B at 4:15 a.m. is that stuff.
Mm.
At least it is for me.
Yeah.
That's the stuff that just rolls around up there.
Gets your
And
blood boiling.
it was torment.
Mm.
Like I wasn't learning anything. I wasn't gaining wisdom. I was furious. I was wounded. I was increasingly bitter. And so it was torture.
Mm.
It wasn't teaching. It was absolutely torture.
Yeah.
And so what I had to do in that scenario, it wasn't cognitively forget, because I don't have the ability to control my cognition at that level, but it was the act of refusing to dwell on it. And that was extremely, extremely important. Like now, further removed from the process and the emotions and the active raw wound, right? I'm years removed from that.
Uh-huh.
I can look back on it. I haven't forgotten it. I remember it very clearly, but I can learn from that now, where I wasn't in a position to learn from it at the time. I was only in a position to be tortured by it.
Yeah. Huh. Absolutely. That makes me want to ask a question, in the context of that story. So, looking back on it now, would you say that you are now at a spot where you have forgiven that person, where forgiveness has taken place? Is that how you would describe it?
Yes, yeah. I've actively gone through the process of forgiving
Mm-hmm.
this particular individual more than once.
And so that,
And this is kind of
oh,
something I was gonna bring up. I don't think forgiveness is always a one-time act.
oh
I
yeah,
think
that's great.
I think it's sometimes a daily, or maybe it's just weekly, but for sometimes it's going to be daily or even multiple times daily choice of the will to say, no, I'm not going to choose to be hurt by this. I'm not going to choose to build up resentment about this. I'm going to choose to not let that control me
Yeah.
or my future or whatever else.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely key. The ongoing choice of saying this was a very, very impactful thing in my life, but I am trying to make the choice today and right now to minimize that impact compared to maybe what it did yesterday, you know? I do think that it's an ongoing process, especially if we're talking about more traumatic things. Which, like I said,
Mhm.
I do think that, forgiveness can be on a very minor level too, but anything that's super traumatic, it's like you can even get to a spot where you forgive someone else or someone has forgiven you for something that you know that you have done wrong, but then you can find yourself in another fight or disagreement or conflict down the line that stems from the same place where this person has forgiven you, and
Yeah.
or that you have forgiven them, but you still have these emotions, you still have this frustration, and there's an insecurity sometimes in the back of your mind that goes, well, this happened once before. What's to keep it from happening again?
Yeah.
And yeah, like you said, I think the picture that you painted of it being a teacher versus it being a torturer, that's profound in my opinion. I think that's very vivid and very accurate. Um, the other follow-up question I wanted to ask too, do you think that you forgave this person? To which you said yes, and it's an ongoing process. Do you feel, especially when you initially took those steps to forgive this person, however that looked like for you, did the other person ask for your forgiveness, or did the other person have any impact or warrant for that forgiveness from you?
No, no,
See, I feel like
no.
that's a good topic to discuss too.
Yeah, yeah, that is very good. No, this particular person never asked for forgiveness, never apologized, and to this day, I would put good money if I was a betting man that this particular person wouldn't feel doesn't feel guilt
Yeah,
about what they did.
absolutely.
And I don't want to take away whatever you're about to say, but I think
No.
this is where that quote by whoever said it comes into play so much. That idea that like when you're holding something against somebody, it's like you have this prisoner, and it's like if I let them free, they're getting off
Yeah,
lightly,
yeah.
and I can't let it go, or they're getting off
Yeah, it's
lightly.
the justification of it, right? Like you used the word revenge earlier, and I want to just say to anyone who hears that word, sometimes there could be like a negative connotation, especially for someone who hasn't maybe experienced a situation that invokes that level of righteous fury in you to some degree. But I think revenge is very accurate. I think that there is a level
Yeah,
of justification on some situations and some people where it's like if they don't get what they deserve, if they don't get what is coming to them, like then something is wrong in this world. Like I cannot allow this
Hmm.
to stand. And
Yeah.
it's a very real, very strong feeling for those who have
Yeah.
experienced it.
Yeah. Which is where that second part of that quote is so counterintuitive.
Yeah.
He's like, so again, it's to forgive is to set a prisoner free and then discover that the prisoner was you.
Hmm. Hmm.
So it's like, if I let them go, if I let them off, they're getting away for free, and there's no justice in that.
Yeah.
But counterintuitively, the only person that you are not letting off is yourself, because that unforgiveness does nothing but damage to you. Like,
That's right.
the act of not forgiving is not hurting them unless you're actively taking the steps to ruin their life, right?
Hmm.
Which will hurt them,
Hmm.
sure. But if it's just the unforgiveness, the only person that is hurting is you, which is counterintuitive as that is.
Yeah.
You're the only one who's taking the wound there.
Yeah.
So, no, I never had anyone prompt me to forgive that person. The thing I had to recognize was that I was being like tortured at 4:30 in the morning every single morning. Like, and it was thoroughly souring my attitude, my peace.
Yeah.
It was becoming this thing that I was spending hours a day, like having it sit in the back of my mind.
Hmm.
And I was like, I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do that, or I'm going to do this radical thing. I'm going to take these steps to, and in the end, it was like, okay, there's nothing I can really do. There's nothing I should do in this particular situation. And if I should have done something, then that's one thing. But in this particular situation, there was nothing I needed to do. I just needed to forgive,
Hmm.
to learn, and then to not let that dominate my mind and my emotions.
Yeah. Move on. Yeah. Yeah. I think that says a lot that, there's so much of whenever it's justification or the rightness of it, there's so much in society that I feels like I'm not going to forgive someone when they are in the wrong. They're the ones who made the mistake. They're the ones who are actively causing harm. Why would I ever forgive them? And then the other side of that coin I feel like is true. It's I can only forgive someone when they ask for an apology, when they
Yeah.
recognize that they've done wrong, when they have come to you contrite, and then, well, no, I have to figure out, do they really mean it or are they full of it? Because, I got to make sure. And I get that. I get a lot of the logic and the reasoning behind that. I feel it's kind of oxymoronic, but I feel like I understand the logic of that. But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, recognizing that there really is a difference between forgiveness and reconciliation. And
Yeah.
I could not agree with you more about that quote, Nate, that the forgiveness has everything to do with you and what you're holding on to and the torture that you're allowing yourself to go through. And your life is being attached to that thing. Whenever the other person it cares about it or not. Sometimes it's, one person that you run into one time, one night, and you never see them again for the rest of their life. Well, how are you going to forgive someone who did you wrong when you never get a chance for them to give an apology or for to get justified in your mind? Like, are you
Yeah.
gonna hold on to that level of revenge, of the need of reckoning, which I totally get, but it really is so much about what's going on inside of me. What am I holding on to? Am
Hmm.
I trying to move forward or am I staying attached to this harmful situation?
Yeah. Yeah. And we've been talking in general terms, but like you have to directly apply this to like really big life altering like damage,
Hmm. Yeah.
like where the pain is serious, when we're talking about real trauma.
Hmm.
And I think in situations like that, the goal of forgiveness might not be like a warm, happy, joyful feeling,
Yeah.
Like maybe you can do that and you're like, oh, I let it go and I feel so good about it. Maybe you can get there, but with really, really, really rough stuff that we've all experienced and all of us have, like in our past or even in our present. I think sometimes it's just that that tiny little quiet decision to not let that thing that somebody did to you dominate your head.
Yeah. Yeah.
or dominate your emotions in that moment, which can be, I mean, as like in response to your question, as I said before, that almost is never a one and done decision. It can be a very long and day by day back and forth process, not a one-time event, but more of a less of a one decision at a crossroads and more of a path that you continue to walk down.
Yeah.
But, you said earlier, this is not a Christian podcast, but we are Christians. And as followers of Jesus, I do think it's worth noting that we're not just encouraged to forgive. We are commanded to forgive.
That's a great point.
Yeah. So when you think about that idea, the fact that followers of Jesus are commanded to forgive, does that make it harder or easier for you? Does that grate, or how do you receive that?
Yeah, I think that if you're starting from the place once more of not having a clear understanding, that forgiveness is about what's going on inside of you, in your heart, in your mind, what's going on internally, not externally, then it can be incredibly grating. Like if it really is about me having to forgive this person who wronged me, who's obviously in the wrong, who has caused harm to me or my family or the people I cared about. And my religion tells me that I have no choice in the matter, that I have to do that. I have to let this person off. I have to release them from any consequence of harm that they have caused. Oh man, that can be incredibly grating, because you do become so focused externally on that person, on the other person, and what they have done wrong, and on the harm itself. And I do feel like situations like that is when you don't realize and you don't see the festering that's taking place internally inside of you, because you're so externally focused, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I think for me, the fact that it is like a very clear mandate for being the kind of human that Jesus like demonstrates with his life and then calls other humans to. But basically, like, this is how the world is going to get to where the world needs to be, is by these kind of humans. And these kind of humans are the sort of people that refuse to have unforgiveness in them. Like, that have it like absolutely as a non-negotiable, this is not allowed to be inside of me. To me, it's like, well, of all the visions of what it means to be a human, Jesus' vision is the one that most deeply resonates with my experience and my hopes, and even as I've tracked the course of my own life. It's been the vision of humanity that I have seen work the most of any vision that I've attempted to accept, like, into my life. So if he's out here saying this is a non-negotiable, like this is like a fundamental part of what it means to be a functional, like, real human, then this is one of those cases where I'm just going to say his wisdom is better than mine. His ways are higher than my ways, Tony.
That's my favorite.
Yeah. No, but I do think that is one of those cases where you can almost apply that phrase. Like,
Yeah,
there's my
yeah.
wisdom, and my wisdom says, no. I
Yeah.
can't let that person off for what they did.
It must be
And that
consequences.
feels, right. That feels wrong to me.
Yeah.
But then the wisdom of Jesus is to say, you are hurting you, and you're hurting everyone around you by holding on to that. And it really is, to me, it's deeply counterintuitive. I can see the truth in it, but it feels wrong. And I just have to say at some point, well, I'm not the smartest person in the universe, and I'm not the best guide for my life. The decisions I've made where I've done things the way that seems right to me have often ended up wrong. So I'm going to trust that he knows better than I do.
Yeah. Yeah. And that makes me think of another question where it's like, does that mean, in the context of what we just said, does that mean that seeking justice and seeking forgiveness are opposed to one another? Like, can I actively forgive or try to forgive someone yet also desire justice on some level.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, that is probably another conversation because we got to get into what the point of justice is.
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah. And then even from a Jesus follower perspective, like God, Yahweh, cares deeply about justice,
That's right.
yet desires to forgive. So the balance there, I think, is a major part of what's at stake when you look at things like the Old Testament sacrificial system and Jesus atoning death and all kinds of fun biblical theological talking points. Tony and I, to the listeners out there, we were just having a conversation about this before we hit record on this topic. We have a longtime friend of ours named Mike, who is, I would call him an authority on,
absolutely.
on that subject
Absolutely.
in particular. And we're really hoping we can rope him in. Mike, if you're listening, here's the invitation before the invitation's gone out.
Yep.
Although we record these things quite a bit before they go live. So hopefully, Mike, hopefully this is the second time you're hearing this, not the first time. Yeah. Well, for those of you who are listening and being like, please answer that question, I'm really interested in that one. I would say that is
We're gonna have to shelve
not
it.
a can of worms. I'm gonna say stay tuned.
Yes.
Because we want to do that, no pun intended. We want to do that question justice.
Yeah, absolutely though.
But stay tuned. Well, yeah, as we wrap up, I'll provide some of my summarizing thoughts here, and Tony, you can add as you want. Okay. It seems clear that the old forgive and forget phrase, cliche, it's not only unhelpful in its black and white form, it's also like not possible. I think they have different jobs, the role of memory and the role of forgiveness. I think maybe a healthier way of seeing this whole thing is to say that memory without forgiveness leads to bitterness. But on the flip side, the other side of that coin, forgiveness without memory can lead to foolishness.
Yeah.
And I don't think the goal is to choose one over the other.
Yeah.
I think, and this is where it's so difficult, I think the goal is to hold those things in tension with each other, to remember yet forgive. So the real challenge, I think, is to choose that, cultivating, I guess, the grace or the willingness to forgive and like not hold ourselves tethered to past hurts, but also growing in wisdom to remember and move forward in our lives with the things that we have learned from the things in the past. So forgiveness is not like erasing a chapter from your life, but it is about refusing to let that thing in your life like dictate the rest of your life, or like in like a book metaphor, to go back to a chapter and to rip that page out. That's not what forgiveness is, but it is saying, well, that chapter isn't going to 100% decide what the next chapter is going to be. Yeah. It's like whatever pain happened, the pain itself doesn't get the final word of my choices. So I'm going to learn from it, but I'm not going to be controlled by it.
Yeah, that's great. And you said the word tension, and you used the analogy of a book, and I think that's absolutely spot on. I'm going to go in a different direction with the analogy of a topic that we've had is the gym, right? And tension. When you put your muscles under tension, and if you do it the right way, if you do it the healthy way, if you do it in such a way that you're very intentional about doing, then that's what makes you stronger. That's what builds your strength and your physical muscles. And we had an episode not only talking about that, but also growing your emotional muscles. If forgiveness meant ripping a memory out of your head altogether, then you would be losing that opportunity to grow that emotional muscle. Like,
no, it's good.
Yeah, the fact that it's still there, but you're choosing to handle it as best as you're able to in the season that you're in, the right way, that's you lifting that emotional muscle, and that's you building the strength there. And the next time that something in that area occurs, it's not going to be pushing on a bruise. It's not going to be pushing on an area where you're not necessarily strengthened, but instead you have more of a foundation. You have sturdier legs underneath you because you have taken the time to not just dismiss something, to not just act like it didn't exist, to not just erase it from your life, but instead grow from it and build
Mm.
a healthy emotional understanding of how that occurred and how to handle things better moving forward.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to make a dumb analogy about dog training. So I
Well,
feel like the
I'll
gym is a
take your
better analogy.
yeah. I'll take your gym analogy, and I'll throw out a set. I'll throw out a tiny workout to our listeners here. For those of you who are hearing this and you want to try to work out that muscle that Tony was just talking about, that allegorical muscle or metaphorical muscle, excuse me. I think you don't start with sitting down to bench press and cranking out 2 plates day one.
That's right.
You start with something that is less than what you can handle even.
Yeah.
And slowly work your way up from there.
Yeah.
So when it comes to this whole discussion, if you want to take an active step here, don't start with the biggest, most painful wound from your life. Start very small. So my advice to you would be this: if you want to take a step, think of like an old, like minor-ish wound or slight that you're still carrying with you.
Yeah, someone who
maybe it was a friend that said something without thinking about it carefully enough, and it hurt you.
It happens.
Or maybe it was a literal debt that somebody still owes you.
Yep.
Something along those lines. Take 2 minutes, and maybe in a journal, or maybe just in your head, say the words, "I have decided to no longer hold this against you." And you don't have to tell that person. You don't have to feel this sudden wave of warmth or something. Just make like the tiny, simple, quiet, internal decision. And pay attention to that little feeling. Because that feeling of lifting a weight and then setting down that small weight that's the neurological sense that you get, and then you build on to slowly lift bigger and bigger and bigger things. So notice what it feels like to consciously choose to take that metaphorical weight and put it down. That's how you build the muscle. Is you practice in low stakes ways, and you slowly build up your tolerance more and more and more until, hopefully, you and Tony and myself can learn to be injured, but not let the injuries control or dominate us.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. That's another super easy process, guys. Very easy approach. Tune in next time
like to keep it easy.
Yeah, very easy advice.
Yeah. Well, I think that's probably a pretty good way to wrap up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you agree, Tony?
Yeah, and I probably should have said this in the beginning. I'm probably the worst person to talk about memory and forgiveness because I can't remember a thing, and my wife loves that. She loves that I can't remember the bad things.
Wow.
But I remember the good things, and that's what matters.
Yeah, it is very divine of you.
Exactly.
To forgive is divine.
I'm such a good Christian.
So let's have a glass of wine. Yep. Just kidding. I would never advocate for drinking. I would never drink wine. Jesus didn't either.
That's right.
Yep. Yep. My translation says grape juice.
Yeah.
So we're clear.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. All right, everybody. Well, as always, thank you guys for joining us for this easy conversation. We hope you'll tune in again a couple weeks from now for another easy question where we're going to tackle something that maybe is not so easy in a relaxed and fun way.
Yeah.
So
maybe some of that justice conversation, or maybe talking about reconciliation a little deeper than what we touched today. Who knows?
Yeah.
That day will come.
Yeah, I'm always struck by how many other directions we could take an individual topic. We're like, yeah, this is fine for an hour, 45 minutes to an hour. And then we're like, whoa, there's so many things that we did not talk about just now.
Absolutely.
We really need to just start these long series. But for now, this is good for now. This leaves us with some other places to go.
Yeah.
But y'all, thank you. And as always, take it easy.